Poland, summer 2015. Two men, a Pole and a German, call a press conference that will make headlines around the world. Piotr Koper and Andreas Richter declare they've found what everyone had been searching for 70 years, the legendary Nazi gold train. They have proof, they say. Radar images showing an object almost 100 meters long, buried under 9 meters of earth. An armored convoy full of gold, jewels, stolen artwork. 300 tons of treasures hidden by fleeing Nazis as the Red Army advanced in 1945. The Polish Deputy Minister of Culture declares he's 99% certain the train exists. World media goes crazy. Thousands of treasure hunters converge on the small town of Wałbrzych. And then excavations begin. 64 people, including engineers, geologists, archaeologists, military demolition specialists, dig for days. What do they find? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. No train, no tunnel, no gold. Just rocks, an abandoned railway, and a rusty horseshoe. But this is just the latest episode in a story that's lasted 80 years. A legend that has obsessed Poland, attracted treasure hunters from around the world, and raised questions no one has yet answered. Today you'll discover the true story of the Nazi gold train, the mysteries of Project Reese, the desperate searches, the crazy theories, and why this legend refuses to die despite decades of failures. Because in the end, the question remains, does it really exist? Or is it the greatest hoax of the post-war period? To understand this story, we need to go back to spring 1945. Nazi Germany is collapsing. The Red Army advances from the east like an unstoppable wave. Western allies press from the west. Hitler is locked in his Berlin bunker, weeks away from suicide. And in the Reich's eastern territories, in what is now southwestern Poland, there's total panic. The city of Breslau, today Wrocław, is one of the major cultural and economic centers of eastern Germany. For centuries, it had been German, full of palaces, museums, banks, treasures accumulated over generations. But now the Soviets are days away. Nazi officials know what will happen when they arrive. Looting, destruction, reprisals. They must evacuate everything of value. Bank gold, jewels confiscated from deported Jews, artwork stolen from museums across Europe, secret documents, weapons, ammunition. Everything must be taken away. According to legend, in early May 1945 an armored convoy departed from Breslau heading west. The official destination was Waldenburg, today Wałbrzych, a mining town about 60 kilometers away. But the train never reached its destination. It disappeared, literally, as if the earth had swallowed it. And here enters one of the Third Reich's most mysterious and megalomaniacal projects. Project Reese, Project Giant. Imagine an underground labyrinth of tunnels, bunkers, shelters carved into the Owl Mountains, right in the area where the train disappeared. An underground complex so vast that even today, 80 years later, we don't know exactly how big it is or what its true purpose was. Project Reese began in 1943, when the war started going badly for the Nazis. Allied bombings were devastating German cities. Weapons factories were being destroyed. Hitler and his armaments minister, Albert Speer, decided they needed a plan B, move critical infrastructure underground where bombs couldn't reach them. The Owl Mountains were chosen because they're composed of extremely hard rock, nearly impenetrable, perfect for excavating bunkers that could withstand any bombardment. Between 1943 and 1945, more than 30,000 concentration camp prisoners were forced to dig tunnels in inhuman conditions. They worked 24 hours a day in grueling shifts, malnourished, exhausted, sick. About 5,000 died during construction. And what were they building? Nobody knows for certain, because in the chaos of retreat, the Nazis destroyed practically all documentation on Reese. There are no complete plans, no detailed maps, no clear orders explaining the project's final purpose. What we know is that 7 separate underground complexes were created. Walimrzeczka, Jugowiec, Włodarz, Zoboń, Sokoleć, Osowka, and the tunnels under Książkesel. 9 kilometers of excavated tunnels, perhaps many more still undiscovered. Some tunnels have narrow gauge railways, others have elaborate piping systems that seem to lead nowhere. Some are reinforced with concrete, others are crude, barely excavated. It's as if the Nazis were building something enormous but never finished. Theories about what Riis was are endless. Some historians, based on Speer's memoirs, maintain it was supposed to be Hitler's secret headquarters, a refuge where the Führer and his closest collaborators could hide while the Reich collapsed. Others believe they were underground factories to produce secret weapons far from bombing. Some speak of laboratories for nuclear experiments, protected by the mountain's impenetrable rock. And then there are the more extreme theories, Nazi occultism, the legendary Nazi bell, a supposed anti-gravity machine tested in the tunnels. But these are fantasies, not history. What's certain is that when the Soviets arrived in May 1945, they found the tunnels partially completed and hastily abandoned. And right here, the legend of the gold train is born. If the Nazis had built this enormous underground complex, and if they knew the Red Army was coming, where would they hide their treasures? Obviously, in the Riis tunnels. And what better way to hide 300 tons of gold, jewels, and artwork than on an armored train driven into one of the tunnels and then sealed behind controlled explosions? The story is passed down through decades. In the 70s, a retired miner named Tadeusz Słowikovski told of hearing from a German man about a train that left Breslau in spring on 1945 as the Soviets approached and disappeared before reaching Waldenburg. Other eyewitnesses, German workers who had worked at Riis, told of seeing German soldiers transporting heavy crates into the tunnels at night, in secret, under armed guard. During the communist period, between the 70s and 80s, the Polish army conducted systematic searches in the Riis tunnels. They used metal detectors, explored every accessible centimeter, drilled, excavated. They found nothing. Zero. No train, no gold. But the Riis tunnels are vast, many are flooded, others have collapsed, some might still be unknown. Lack of evidence isn't evidence of absence, right? And then we arrive at 2015. Piotr Koper, a Polish builder, and Andreas Richter, a German researcher, claim to have used ground-penetrating radar and found something. Radar images show regular geometric shapes about 8 to 9 meters deep, near kilometer 65 of the Rosła-Wałbrzych railway line, shapes that look like railway cars, collectively almost 100 meters long. Koper and Richter negotiate with the Polish government. They want 10% of anything found as compensation. The government agrees. World media explodes. Wałbrzych, a post-industrial city that had suffered economically after communism's fall and the closure of coal mines, suddenly becomes the center of global attention. Thousands of tourists arrive. Treasure hunters with metal detectors invade the surrounding forests. The mayor candidly admits that the publicity generated by the train hunt is worth about $200 million, while the city's annual tourism promotion budget is $380,000. Whether the train exists or not, Wałbrzych has already won. But before excavations, scientists from the Krakow University of Science and Technology conduct a non-invasive site investigation. They use radar, seismic sensors, geophysical analysis. And their conclusion is clear. There's no train. What Koper and Richter interpreted as railway cars are probably natural rock formations created by underground ice. The team leader, Janusz Madej, is diplomatic but firm. There might be traces of a collapsed tunnel, but no evidence of a train. Koper and Richter don't give up. They obtain permission to dig from the landowners, Polish railways. Excavations begin on August 15th, 2016, financed with 110,000 euros from private sponsors. A team of 64 people works for 7 days. They dig, drill, analyze, and find exactly what scientists had predicted: nothing. No tunnel, no train, no gold, just earth, rocks, an old track, and that horseshoe some journalist finds ironically significant. It could have ended there. But no. In 2017, Koper announces he's found 7 cavities in the ground that could be a railway tunnel. More excavations needed, he says, more money, more equipment. Richter abandons the project in 2018, tired. But Koper continues. He never finds the gold train, but in 2019 makes a surprising discovery. During renovation work in an old palace near Wrocław, he finds 24 16th century Renaissance portraits hidden behind a plaster wall. They're priceless, so is Koper a charlatan or a genuinely unlucky treasure hunter? Depends who you ask. But the story doesn't end. In 2025, 80 years after the war's end, a new group called Gold Train 2025 claims to have found another possible location. They say they have no connection to Koper and Richter. They have new evidence, new documents, new technologies. They've even received an anonymous letter describing camouflaged railway cars hidden in a sealed tunnel. Who's the anonymous sender? Perhaps a descendant of an eyewitness? A former German soldier? An imposter seeking publicity? We don't know. And here we must pause and ask ourselves, did this train ever exist? Historians are skeptical, and for good reasons. First, there are no German documents confirming the existence of such a convoy. German railways were meticulous in keeping records. If an armoured train had departed from Breslau with 300 tons of treasures, there would be documentation, transport orders, cargo manifests, security reports. There's nothing. And if you're thinking that maybe explosive wreaths or other secret weapons might have played a role in this story, check out the other videos, where I talk about even more absurd devices that secret services used during the war. Every invention has its incredible side. Second, local historians have found evidence that Breslau's gold was actually evacuated, but not toward Waldenburg. It was sent to Berlin, to the German central bank, or dispersed to other safer locations. Why would the Nazis ever send precious treasures westward, closer to the Soviet advance, when they could send them south toward the Alps or west toward territory still controlled by the Reich? Third, logistics. 300 tons of gold would require about 6 full railway cars, plus cars for artwork, jewels, weapons, ammunition. We're talking about a convoy of at least 10 to 12 cars. How do you get a train that length into a tunnel and then seal it without anyone knowing? You'd need massive explosives to collapse the tunnel entrance. There would be debris everywhere. And how do you ensure the tunnel holds and doesn't collapse on the train itself? But on the other hand, there are elements that fuel the legend. Project Reese is real, the tunnels exist, and many of them have never been fully explored. According to Speer's memoirs, 213,000 cubic meters of tunnels were excavated, but today we know less than 100,000. Where are the other 100,000 cubic meters? Submerged? Collapsed? Still to be discovered? It's mathematically possible that sections of the complex exist that no one has yet found. And then there's the question of eyewitness testimonies. Tadeusz Słowikowski had no reason to invent his story. He was a retired miner, not a treasure hunter. Other Wałbrzych residents tell similar stories passed down from their German parents or grandparents who lived there during the war. Are they all collective fantasies? Or is there a kernel of truth buried under decades of exaggeration and mythology? There's also a fascinating psychological aspect. Why is the gold train legend so persistent? Partly it's because the Lower Silesia region has a complicated history. Before 1945, it was German territory. After the war, Germany lost these territories. The German population was expelled and Poles arrived. For decades, the new Polish residents lived with the feeling that the region wasn't truly theirs, that one day the Germans would return to reclaim their homes. This psychological uncertainty fueled legends of hidden treasures, buried secrets, riches waiting to be recovered by their true owners. And then there's the universal fascination with hidden treasure. The Nazis stole unimaginable quantities of wealth during the war. The Allies recovered much, but not all. Trains full of gold were actually found. In 1945, American troops discovered a train in Austria, containing thousands of crates of gold, silver, jewels, cash, carpets, artwork stolen from Hungarian Jews. This is documented historical fact. So it's not impossible that other similar convoys existed, and some Nazi treasures have never been found. The Amber Room, a room entirely decorated with amber panels, gold and precious stones, was stolen by the Nazis from Catherine Palace near St. Petersburg. It disappeared in 1945 and has never been found. Some theorists believe pieces of the Amber Room could be on the gold train. Fantasies? Probably, but the fact that real treasures are still missing keeps hope alive. From an economic standpoint, the gold train hunt has been paradoxically successful even without finding anything. Tourism in Wałbrzych has exploded. Tours in the Ries tunnels, which were already operational but little known, now attract visitors from around the world. You can visit the Osowka, Rzeczka and Włodarz complexes. Walk in the same tunnels where thousands of prisoners died digging. It's haunting, fascinating and deeply educational. These places are also memorials, testimonies to the horrors of Nazism and human suffering. And there's an important ethical question often ignored. If the gold train really existed, who would it belong to? Much of the gold and jewels the Nazis transported had been stolen from Jews during the Holocaust. In 2015, the World Jewish Congress reminded Polish authorities that any treasure found should be returned to rightful owners or their heirs. It's not just an adventure hunt, but historical justice. These legends of lost treasures remind us that history still holds mysteries waiting to be solved. If you're fascinated by the hidden secrets of World War II, there's an entire world of forgotten stories and incredible discoveries still waiting to be explored. So in the end, after 80 years of searches, excavations, theories, hopes and disappointments, what can we conclude? Does the Nazi gold train really exist? The honest answer is, probably not. There's no concrete evidence. The most serious and scientific searches have found nothing. Historians are skeptical. The logistics don't make sense. And eyewitness testimonies, however suggestive, aren't enough without physical evidence. But is it impossible? No, it's not impossible. The Ries tunnels are vast, mysterious, largely unexplored. World War II history is full of surprises, secrets that emerge decades later, and until every centimeter of those tunnels has been mapped, explored, documented, the theoretical possibility remains. It's remote, infinitesimal, but it remains. And perhaps this is the real treasure of the gold train legend. Not the gold itself, but the story it tells. A story of war, desperation, survival, mystery. A story that kept alive the memory of Project Ries, a Nazi project as ambitious as it was insane. A story that brought the world to know Wałbrzych and Lower Silesia. A story that reminds us that World War II still has secrets to reveal, unanswered questions, places to explore, and perhaps ultimately, this is why the legend refuses to die. Not because people truly believe the train exists, but because they want to believe it. Because in a world where everything seems already discovered, mapped, photographed, there's something romantic about the idea that unsolved mysteries still exist. Treasures hidden in the earth's depths, secrets buried under mountains, truths waiting to be found. So does the Nazi gold train really exist? Nobody knows for certain, but we'll keep searching for it. Because this is what humans do. We search, we dream, we hope, and sometimes, very rarely, we actually find something extraordinary. Koper found those Renaissance portraits. It wasn't the gold train, but it was still a treasure. And perhaps this is the real lesson. Sometimes when you search for one thing, you find another equally precious. And the journey itself, the search, becomes part of the story. The tunnels of Project Ries are still there, in Poland's Owl Mountains. Silent witnesses to an uncompleted project, shattered megalomaniacal dreams, unspeakable suffering. And somewhere perhaps, in a still undiscovered section, sealed by an explosion 80 years ago, there might be a train, loaded with gold, jewels, artwork, or not. But until we know for certain, the legend will live, and people will keep searching. Because in the end, the most precious gold isn't what you find, but what you dream of finding.